Welcome, everyone. I'm Sue Landing. This is Show and Share, and we're talking today about fidget toys, everything about them, data, how people are using them, introducing them, what makes them good and bad, all kinds of stuff like that. So happy to have you all here today. I am going to turn off my video for a moment and jump to a PowerPoint to get us started and share a few poll questions, and then we'll share some information and then give everybody a chance to ask questions and share their best and favorite tips on using fidget toys. So hope that sounds okay to everybody. All right. I'm going to share my screen. And okay. Hi, is that working for everybody? I'm gonna look for thumbs up. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. So everything fidgets. Said what we're going to focus on. Let me actually just jump into a poll really quick. All right. First poll is, how do you basically feel about fidget toys? Do you love them? Do you hate them? Or are you kind of on the fence? And that's why you're here, because you want to learn a little bit more about them. All right. Got a couple more people answering. Let's see. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. Here you go. You guys can see this. So a lot of people love them. Just a few people hate them. Love to hear why. So let's get into that. And a few are on the fence. All right. Very helpful, very helpful. And one more thing, because one more question, because I want this to kind of inform how I spend the time before we're kind of talking together. And that is just kind of a why you're here. So of the agenda items that I've shared so far, what is most of interest to you? Is it the data regarding the fidgeting and doodling? And you guys can all see this, right? Yes? Yeah. Okay. Is it who benefits from fidget tools? Is it the criteria for what makes it good, how to introduce them, other things that you can do with them? Okay, this is looking pretty evenly distributed. I'm going to just wait for a couple more respondents. We'll show you the results and then we'll jump in.
Hey, Susan.
Yeah.
Really quick before you end this. So a few years ago at Verizon, we used fidget spinners in classes. So we took a class for trainers in Florida. It looked like Romper Room is what
Yeah.
it looked like when we walked in. And this is the first time I was ever introduced to fidget spinners. And what we found is we use at Verizon Wireless, we use fidget spinners and Akush balls and so on and so forth for retention tools. And our retention has jumped up 5 to 6 points in some cases even more, because we're allowing people to use them. So I'm curious on any other data. So thanks so much for having this today.
Oh, great. Great, great, great. Okay, so here's where we are. I'm going to just share the results. And so it looks like we're pretty evenly split along everything. So I'm going to jump in. And just as David did, please feel free to stop me and start me and kind of guide me. All right. So back, let me close this. Okay. So similarly to what you said, David, I'm just going to share a couple of data points. This was an informal survey that was done on LinkedIn. And the tester showed these two pictures, the right and left of the screen, and asked people to respond on which they preferred. And 14% voted for A, 680 or 75% voted for B. So that was, pretty clear right there. A couple of other data points, and I want to preface this by saying that when I was looking for research on these, and you brought this up too just now, about the fidget spinners. That fidget spinner, do you guys, I'm trying to see if I have one here. I feel like I don't have one right in my office, but what's tricky about it is that it can be really loud and distracting. And although you had very good success with them, a lot of people didn't. And they felt like they were so disruptive that it turned people away from fidget toys. And there were a bunch of studies that actually came out fairly negatively towards fidgets because it was based on the fidget spinner rather than others that are a little bit less distracting. These were some 3 points here. Oh, thank you, Sarah. I'll show you this when I bring my camera back on. These were 3 data points that actually showed what David suggested, that it really did decrease distraction, improve student achievement, and improve recall. And as Mary says, yeah, fidgets in many schools aren't even allowed. So I'm not going to kind of belabor these. Here are some data points. I will make this available to folks afterwards if you need this information. So yeah, here's the fidget spinner. Where am I? So, you probably can't hear it right now, but so very happy that, there has been other research and other data points that do suggest that there are benefits. And to whom are those benefits received? So we've talked a lot about people who are kinesthetic learners historically. I think that people don't divide learners into, are you, kinesthetic or visual or auditory, that we now appreciate that everyone has a little bit of all of those things. And the more that you involve movement and, all of your senses, all parts of your brain in learning, the better off you are. So kinesthetic learners, sure. ADD and ADHD learners, having something to do with your hands can also be really helpful to just kind of help you focus. And finally, there's the idea of floating attention. And this idea goes back to prehistoric times, where the fact that we had this extra attention that wasn't, laser focused on the one thing that we're doing actually kept us safe from predators. So now there aren't a lot of predators around, but when we're in learning situations or we're at work, we're very easily distracted. So by doing something that's kind of mindless and, it uses up that floating attention without really taking concentrated focus from the task at hand. Make sense so far? Yes, yes, yes. Okay. All right. So, what are the qualities of a good fidget toy? If I don't like the fidget spinners, then what do I like? So, not distracting, quiet, durable. The idea of a fidget is that it's repeated motion. You're using it over and over and over again. You don't want it to break. You want to have interesting movements. You want it to be pleasing to the touch. And again, beware, not noisy, not distracting, no projectiles, none of that stuff. There are a few other qualities. So I think these are sort of the top 5. I did create this matrix of qualities of good fidget toys. And let's see, sorry, few extra clicks. So we kind of did this evaluation based on 11 different features. So, what's it made of? Plastic can easily kind of go through a dishwasher cycle or be washed. Is it for personal use or is it shareable? What's the motion? What's the size? Is it interesting to look at? How much sound is it like clicks? There are some people who love clicks, but frankly, it is a little bit louder. Um, we're looking at cost because some people know that their fidget toys away at the end of a session, or there are others who are like, if this is for me, I want to spend money on get a really good item because I know I'm going to keep it for a while. So durability, weight, fun factor, and sanitization, whether it passed or failed, our dishwasher or laundry test, depending on which was appropriate there. All right. I have heard and I have some ideas about the ways that we've heard people introducing and talking about their fidget toys. And there are some people who will say, I just throw them out on the table. There are others um, who share data or more explanation about them. And I'm curious among the group, if some of you wouldn't mind sharing what your techniques are for introducing your use of fidget toys. Feel free to unmute yourself.
We have, this is Kim from Merritt Island, Florida, but we have our training classes themselves. We have three different training classes,
Okay.
and we have two boxes of the fidget toys in each class. And we set them out on either end of the front tables. And we open them up. I show my favorite, which is the mice and the cube of cheese. I love that. I have one sitting on my desk that's all mine that nobody gets to play with. And we just say, here's some fidget toys. We know what it's like when you're sitting for a long time and listening. So please feel free. And then I'll start passing the boxes around. And people they usually come back empty. People will take two or three of the toys out of the boxes and use them. They love them. We've always had really good reception with the fidget toys in our
Awesome.
classes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. Sounds great. Who else would be willing to share? Yes,
Hello.
Nora, please.
I use them as a needs assessment. I put them in a display in the back with some other things, extra markers, some highlighters, tools. I don't call them toys. I think that the audit people get real nervous about that. I call them tools, fidget tools, but I also put them in the back of the room and with other things that people could choose. And then I notice who gets up when they get up and who gets up and chooses it and brings it back to their seat. And if I see several people are getting antsy and moving toward it, I know I need to change up what I'm doing because we need to change the energy in the room. But those few people, I can only imagine what they would be doing with their hands and with their energy if they didn't have something legitimate to do. They'd be causing trouble.
Yeah,
So I like the choice and control, but also I'm watching who's picking them up. Now I know something about that person and I'm going to conduct myself a little bit differently with them. That's my style.
excellent. Rachel has asked the group, are you using fidget toys for all trainings, all day, half day, 1 hour, 2 hour, live, online? Can anyone answer that?
Yeah, our classes are we don't usually have just a half a day or all day trainings. Our classes are usually a week to 3 weeks.
Oh,
Because we're in a financial institution. So when I say training classes, we're talking about training tellers, MSRs, loan people, and it's a
mhm.
it's a length of training. And so yes, we use them if it's a half day training, if we do happen to have one, or definitely our all day or our week or 2 week trainings, we use them a lot.
Yeah. That's a long time. As you were speaking earlier, Kimberly, and you were mentioning that people sit for a long time, um, it just kind of brought to mind the other tip that I've heard folks share a lot about taking breaks and about welcoming people, every half an hour or so. Like, feel free to stand up, walk around the room. The fact is that, or creating segments or instructional little modules where you get people to stand, to find a partner, to share, or to just, okay, I want you to listen to the next 5 minutes of whatever I have to tell you. If you're able, do it standing up. Feel free to stretch while I'm doing it. So all of these, I mean, we're talking about fidgets today, but there are other methods that we can use as trainers to get people to focus. Again, we're also talking about fidget toys, but doodling, writing things down, so many benefits of writing, right? And I'm sure we've all seen people like do their little like pen twirly thing. You guys seen that? I don't know, people did it in school. Yeah, so, and I think, yeah, you're getting some other answers, Rachel, about people doing it all the time for any class, that the length of it doesn't really matter. Um, and Rob, I'm seeing your note about a trainer stopping the use of fidget toys. And I'm curious, and maybe you would unmute, whether it was the trainer who was distracted or it was, which toys were in use, or whether it was, other students who were being distracted. Do you have any other information about that? Just curious.
Sorry, I wasn't more clear on that. We leave the fidget toys out all week long, like Kimberly was saying. Ours is a week long class, and we just leave them out, and people are used to using them. And this instructor came in and started his deal, started going, up on his content, and then he just stopped, and he says, "Can somebody tell me what's going on? What are these things, you guys? What are you doing?" It was distracting him, whether it was the spinners or the ones that twist and make. We reached a compromise, and anything that didn't make sound, we continued to use. But the if he could hear it, it was just distracting to him. And
Yeah.
I couldn't believe somebody of his level of his training, he didn't know what fidget spinners were. He didn't know anything about them. So I was shocked by it because our class loves them. They use them all the time.
Yeah. Well, and here are some of our newest ones that are very quiet. So this is called Fidget because it has these three prongs and they move like this. Sorry, there's a little tag on here that's inhibiting the movement of it. And they kind of fit together nicely. So that's one of our new ones. And then here's Tracks. Almost looks like a bicycle chain, but they swivel in addition to bending. So I think they also pop apart. If you had two, you could you could extend it even longer. But this is the idea of like, you can use it with one hand, two hands. But again, focus is, I don't want this to be distracting. I want it to just, be soothing. So, let's other uses. Let's stay on this for another minute or two. Any other tips? All right, I wanted to share one other idea that based on the fact that we have a lot of folks who say, oh, I love the fidget toys, but they always disappear. I can't keep them around. And so one thought that I had as I was creating this module, this session that we have today, is the idea that I wonder if if you were able to kind of bargain with people to say, okay, if you want to take one of the tools, why don't you share with me what it's going to remind you of? What are the takeaways that you're going to associate with this? So, whichever one they pick, whichever toy they want or tool, because I love that terminology much better than toy, also, Nora. Um, let's kind of think metaphorically. What is this going to remind you of that you want to take away to your next session? Or into the, better yet, into the workplace. And, so that there's longevity to it. So they're not just saying, oh, I'm going to give this to my kid, or I want this at my office. But every time I pick this up, I'm going to think about the 4 tracks, the 4 personality types, and how they interact with each other, how I need to swivel and change around what I'm doing, how how all of the things are sort of interconnected. And that may be another way to get a little bit more mileage out of your fidget toys. And also, as people are using them, or excuse me, back up, as people are going through the class and the workshop, to kind of tie some of the learning in real time to what the action is, or how the fidget toys put together. So I kind of like that idea. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think
Give it a thumbs up.
the metaphor business is great. That's a really great way to link it up. I say to them, I differentiate between what's a tool and what's a party favor. And so I have things that they can take away, and I tell them that's a party favor. If you choose it, take it, otherwise leave it on the table. These are my tools. I'll ask you to return them at the end so I can use them again next time. And differentiating like that, I lose a lot less that way.
Yeah, that's nice. And there are some others that are less expensive. So Casey mentioned the pipe cleaners, and could be a great activity, either metaphorical conversation, or, build something that, that reminds you of a session, or maybe it is just a fidget toy and that's it. But when they're low cost, yeah, it's easier to say goodbye to them. All right, what other questions do people have? Because I want to make sure this time is answering the questions that you had at the beginning, and is kind of meeting your needs and your expectations. What else is lingering? What might be helpful to you all?
So I typically do, there's a couple classes I do that are all day or half day, but for the most part, I do 1 or 2 hour trainings. That's the majority of what I do.
Okay.
And so I'm curious, my classes are very interactive. We have a very robust training guide usually that goes with it. Lots of things to fill out, right? Take things. I've been hesitant to bring on fidget toys because I don't want it to detract from people actually filling out the guide and doing the reflection. And so I'm just curious, has anyone had the experience where people don't participate and use the resources because there are those available?
Yeah, please unmute. And can you guys just raise your hand if you have used fidget toys, and if you have some experience that might be helpful to Rachel, or give a thumbs up if your screen is off. All right, so can any of you, lots of people are using them. If you don't mind, could someone unmute and share your experience?
Hi, this is Mary. I'm sorry I'm not in a place where I can turn on my video. But yeah, I use fidget toys a lot. I travel extensively for the kinds of trainings that I do. So my fidget toys have to be light. And so some of my favorite ones are actually doing using crayon or actually colored pencils, because people prefer the colored pencils more than the crayons. And I take, paper that I've just basically made photocopies of that's really low cost, because I'm making a photocopy of the same sort of adult, coloring therapy kind of stuff, large pictures, nothing too true. too intricate. And that's easy to leave behind because when I travel internationally, I also don't want to come back with it. I use a lot of pipe cleaners. I use stuff that makes no noise because, like the person who was talking about the trainer being distracted, I do get a little distracted if you're playing a lot with your toys or tools. I do like that terminology better. And then the other thing is been known to raid my children's toys. So yes, so I'll bring old toys. Again, stuff that doesn't make noise. And when I do travel with them, the people who take them is sort of a little nostalgic, and I let them keep them as well. So those are some of the things I take. I do have to be kind of parsimonious and sort of change it up for my own, not getting too bored of them. Over for me.
Got it. Yeah, Keisha, you had your hand raised, please.
Yes, ma'am. Not so much the fidget toys, but the stress release balls. What I teach work-based learning and just different handling different conflicts in the workplace. And so when we have to have the courageous conversation course, most people get anxiety and freeze up. So we use the stress release balls when it's their turn to share. And I have seen that help a lot with just opening up and having the conversation. So that's one of the things that I've used the stress release balls on. And I was looking at some of the fidget toys, but I do like the stress release balls for someone to have something to hold on to as they're going through some challenging conversations.
Thank you. And in response to Rachel's question about have any of you seen, and feel free to put this in the chat as well, that when your students are using them, that they stop doing what they're supposed to do? Has anyone seen that? Okay, I'm seeing a lot of head shakes, Rachel.
I see the opposite, which is they're able to focus more, and they put them down when they're writing on the project. And sometimes I say to the tables, if someone is not participating, invite your coworker to join you. So sometimes I invite people who are in teams to invite each other. But people process information differently, and sometimes it's that motion, that movement, that sort of having something else to do with their hands that helps them to process. It gives a different neural pathway into action. So I try not to mess with. That's why I like to see who chooses them, and then it's interesting. And then I walk around and I look. Are they doing their job? Are they on the right screen? Are they filling the things in? If they're not, that's a different situation. But I found the opposite is true. The more they have freedom to learn the way they need to learn and move the way they need to move, the better they're learning.
Thank you, Nora. This brings to my attention also to my recall that I heard Chad Littlefield talking about his We Connect cards where he has conversation starters on one side, and on the other side of one of his decks, he has like stretches or movements that he gives people. And this reminds me a little bit of also what Keisha was saying of giving some people something to do with their hands or their body during what could be a stressful situation, can sort of relieve them of that and give them a different physical experience to focus on. And so that's, I like the idea of using squeeze balls for that. And, I don't think you'd want people stretching during, while you're presenting all kinds of information, if it's disruptive or full body or whatever. But if they're paired off and having a 2-on-2 conversation to give them something to do to, take the awkwardness out of that. I liked that idea. I wanted to pass that along. Other questions while we're here? We're at the half hour, but before we hang up and before I let you go, if anyone else has other top tips or questions for the rest of the group while we're together here, it's a good time to ask. We have lots of brain power with us on the call right now. Anything else? All right. Well, with that, let me just say thank you to everyone for being here, for sharing, for asking questions.